Power corrupts, and media imperialism has led to media tyranny. Since World War II, the US has imposed its policies on the masses via media such as Hollywood, and today it holds the reins of the internet, digital media. The US emerged after the Age of Empires, but it is today's media empire. Its high-quality film industry still entertains households across the globe, and with today's social television, which is a convergence of TV and internet, and with digital media and social apps practically holding our attention till we drop off, it can even control our dreams and make up our minds about entities and individuals. But who or what does the US want to clear out of its way with all this media influence? And how can its access be turned against it? Stay with me, Leila Faramazi, on Iran Today for answers. Given the enormous investment made by its private businesses in social networking over the years, the US now dominates users' online social media activity. So, it may sound weird that the internet might limit American access and media influence. But with every rise comes a fall. Mr. Abedini joined us in the studio to share his outlook. Has the internet worked in favor of the US and its media hegemony, or to its disfavor?
میتونیم بگیم که اینترنت زائیده
We can say that internet was born in the United States of America and it started spreading everywhere from the Pentagon. However, this playground is being shifted to the directions where actors much more powerful than the Americans are active. Although this playground and the rules of the game are an initiative of the USA, I expect over 5 to 10 years, thoughts will be born out to be in conflict with the US hegemony. The reason is clear: the US has nothing new to introduce. The liberal democratic system, in the words of Huntington, Fukuyama, Friedman and many other thinkers, can no longer answer the needs of frustrated modern humans.
Aye, the miracle which is the internet is an American advent enjoyed by the whole world. But even American voices have risen in protest to the US's hegemony and hypocrisy in handling the internet today, to the way it is preferentially practicing its own rule of freedom of expression. A Canadian analyst, Barry Grossman, brought to notice how the establishment has no difficulty invoking freedom of speech to defend the right of people to engage in hate speech against Muslims or nations which resist US hegemony. This is while it would reject any corresponding right to speak freely in criticizing Zionism or other forms of political extremism that are fully embraced by the Atlantic world establishment. In other words, the Atlantic world governance no longer considers itself bound by its own laws, let alone by international law. Let's see what Mr. Masoudi has to say on the matter. The US has since World War II used Hollywood and the media and internet to impose its ideas on others. Why?
Small group of Jews, whom we label as Zionists, thought of capturing the entire world. They said to themselves, due to their few numbers, they would have to take hold of all assets in the world, and to that end, they had to capture the public opinion. For that purpose, they focused on world media outlets. Therefore, they drew up plans to penetrate the mass media and win their ownership. Therefore, it would be natural if we see that the US would prepare minds first, through media, about its own desired worldview, before taking any action. What is important in such media is the movie industry, music industry, and video games.
US intelligence agencies claim to be surveilling US citizens for their own protection, while at the same time claiming that they are not doing so. By way of the 2008 FA Act, intelligence agencies can demand that U.S. companies hand over their communications in search of foreign intelligence. But congressmen and civil rights groups have insisted the FBI must go through normal legal channels and obtain a warrant before performing such searches. Going by 2019 poll results, common American folk demonstrated a shocking shift of attitude toward free expression, especially younger Americans. Among those results, we see 61% of Americans agree that free speech should be restricted, and 51% believe that the First Amendment, ratified in 1791, should be rewritten to reflect the new cultural norms of today. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution guarantees freedoms such as freedom of religion, expression, assembly, and the right to petition. It guarantees freedom of expression by prohibiting Congress from restricting the press or the rights of individuals to speak freely. It was adopted on December 15, 1791. The U.S. is media imperialism made manifest. Media imperialism being an overconcentration of mass media from larger nations, which can mean a loss of identity to smaller nations at the receiving end for feeds coming in from media empires.
در دهه دوم قرن 21 جنگ ابزار به جنگ افکار تبدیل.
In the second decade of the 21st century, war of hardware has given way to war of thoughts, whose major warfare is media. This media, both in the wake of World War II, when they were trying to insinuate free market economy and liberal democracy culture and a bomb-based militarism into minds, and now where everything has changed and globalization based on sustainable development and humanist religiosity are born out of everything, is crossing through a path where media is instrumental.
The electronic colonialism theory explains how mass media are leading to a new concept of empire, one that conquers and controls the mind. It is a psychological or mental empire. Western news sources such as CNN, AFP and Reuters can have more credibility than local news sources in some less developed countries. Also, global news sources are more conveniently accessible to journalists, so they are more likely to depend on them. However, in most developing countries, the most popular television and radio programs are commonly locally produced. Mr. Qajarieh has a key position in iFilm. Let's hear him out. What would you say of the mission Press TV and iFilm have in countering this US media hegemony?
I think we need to have some critical thinking techniques, and we gotta tell our audience that the picture that is given to the West or to the East through mainstream media is not something that is perfect. So they need to think about other ways to hear the dissident voice, and they need to analyze whatever they actually have. Critical thinking probably is the most important part of or undertaking of Press TV programs, to just raising people's awareness of what mass media is doing with their mind.
Some examples of electronic colonialism are the initiatives of Google. Google has been digitizing the works of 5 major US and UK libraries. This way, the wealth and impact of other non-English libraries will be diminished and marginalized. The second example is a 2007 project to personalize Google's search results. Using the search history or pattern used by individuals, Google helps in presenting more relevant results based on previous search patterns. Talk of getting into someone's head.
Over the past decade, social media has been developed a little, thereby undermining the impact of round-the-clock networks on societies. The reason is clear. In social media, time and space are inexistent. It means that everyone, wherever he or she might be, could receive or send messages. But in order to maintain its hegemony on social media as well, the US has developed such projects as the NSA.
Of the vice that can accompany science, Online social media gave birth to the fake news or yellow journalism. Botty media it's called. That makes for a lot of catchy headlines, often entailing no truth. Bots are designed with the intelligence and robotic power to perform any automated task without human intervention. In the case of online media, they are programmed to gather and collate fake news that could make or break any business, people, society or nation. Our media coverage is limited from time to time. Their social pages are shut down every so often. What are Press TV and iFilm doing to find a way around this? What's the plan? What is being done?
For iFilm, what I already done is that sometimes I use the Reddit social media, where we can have our own groups, and through those groups, probably you like Islam, you like, for example, clean content, for instance, or series and movies that are family-oriented. So you can come up with a Reddit, we call it as a subreddit, and then you can advertise your own stuff there.
Time for a short break. We'll be back in no time. America has always had a claim to freedom of expression and human rights in contemporary history, and this has made it possible to put pressure on governments that, for political and social reasons, have not worked in America's favor and direction. For decades, America's dominance of the media and its propaganda of liberalism and the American dream have made everyone believe the U.S. government is the only government that doesn't fear but cherishes criticism. But President Trump has vowed that 4 congresswomen known as the Squad can't get away with criticizing the United States. Since we're specifically talking of media today, it's a must to make a quick divergence to see what other media outlets have to say. For that, I give you Shahrzad.
Hi, I'm Sharza Manucheri, and this is the news section of Iran Today. We'll be looking online for the latest update on U.S.'s media tyranny and banning non-aligned voices. World Socialist website claims YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter remove accounts and content opposing the illegal assassination of Iranian General Soleimani. In a major escalation of online censorship, Google, Facebook, and Twitter have deleted accounts and removed social media posts on multiple platforms that are opposed to the criminal assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani by the Trump administration in a drone missile strike on January 3rd. There are indications that these censorship moves have been carried out at the direction of the U.S. government. YouTube, the video sharing platform owned by Google, deleted the account of Iran's Press TV UK under orders from the U.S. government. And Facebook and Instagram have removed posts expressing support for Soleimani by dozens of Iranian journalists and other social media influencers. In an article by The Verge, we see American tech companies could face more pressure to share location data with governments to fight coronavirus. The U.S. government is in active talks with Facebook, Google, and a wide array of tech companies and health experts about how they can use location data gleaned from Americans' phones to combat the novel coronavirus, including tracking whether people are keeping one another at safe distances to stem the outbreak. The government is going to monitor your location to ensure you're staying at a safe distance away from people most of the time. Even if the data was anonymized as promised, it still might seem like a dangerous precedent to set. When else might the government ask to track our phones? Global Times reports U.S. crackdown on China's media contravenes principle of freedom of the press. In recent days, the U.S. government has made a dizzying array of moves against China. The U.S. government instituted a personnel cap on certain Chinese media entities in the U.S. On February 18th, the U.S. State Department listed 5 Chinese media outlets as foreign missions to oversee their activities in the U.S. One day later, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo accused China of restricting freedom of the press after China revoked the credentials of 3 Wall Street Journal reporters for an offensive headline made by the newspaper that was taken as a clear example of racial discrimination against the Chinese people. Then, some U.S. officials advocated the expulsion of dozens, if not hundreds, of Chinese journalists who are now stationed in the U.S. The unfair treatment of the Chinese media by the U.S. government has a more sinister motive: to win the China-U.S. strategic competition. That's all for this segment. We'll see you next week.
Trump's attitude to the squad of ethnic congresswomen goes against all that the First Amendment tradition of political dissent stands for. And the House of Representatives surprisingly passed a resolution condemning President Trump's Twitter attacks on the squad as racist. Talking of stamping out any opposing voices, do you think things will get better for audiences after Donald Trump, say with the rise of Democrats?
In cognitive linguistics, we have the idea of how we can look at mind through a lot of metaphors. Okay, this can be a very good metaphor of having Trump as a strict father and Clinton as a nurturing one. Clinton or probably Democrats got the feeling that we better let people sit together, talk with each other, and later on we'll see what we can do about it. But when it comes to Trump, that's a different story. That's Republican, or probably say the strict father in a way that you cannot change him.
I said that in this great asset, the internet, America has a weakness. Cyberspace, its arena, is exactly where the US's military, economic and political power could be neutralized, and where the United States and its allies are vulnerable to cyber attacks. Up until 2016 and the US election and after, it was claimed that Russia had a significant impact on shaping American public opinion through cyberspace, Facebook. This became an excuse for the US government to infiltrate, monitor and access personal information of the billions of users of these networks worldwide.
به نظر من تفاوتی بین دونالد ترامپ
I see no difference between Donald Trump, Barack Obama, Ronald Reagan, George Bush Jr. and George Bush Sr. as they are seeking to impose the America First strategy upon the world. Their styles may be different. Republicans have their own methodology and Democrats their own. Republicans have more rigid and more military-oriented methods. Democrats were no different. They were the ones who set the stage for paralyzing sanctions against Iran. So was the case with the US sanctions on Russia and China. We can say that all US presidents pursued the same strategy. Donald Trump may be seeking to impose tough sanctions on Russia and China, but it was Democrats who first accused Russia and China of having meddled with US presidential elections. Therefore, even if Democrats come to power, nothing would change substantively. However, their methods may differ tactically.
اعمال تحریم‌ها بر ضد چین.
I mentioned Iran. Iran has frequently suffered its social media pages being shut down and its satellite TV stations being zapped off air, no questions asked. Here's a good one. Right after New Year 2020, Iranian General Soleimani, the war hero, was killed by a US drone. Iranians flocked to their beloved homepage Instagram to open up their hearts, but their accounts were shut down. Hundreds of thousands of users had their media pages on Instagram, Facebook and YouTube shut down. Explanations were feeble. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter and YouTube said that in removing posts in praise of Soleimani, they were complying with US sanctions law, as the US government's designation of the IRGC and its leadership. History was just repeating itself. Not so long ago, on the 10th of December 2019, Press TV and its Spanish-language affiliate, Hispan TV, were flooded with messages. Viewers wanted to know why the international network's YouTube channels had been put out of service. Google had simply blocked their access with no prior notice. This is while the Press TV website chief insisted the channel had adhered to all Google policies, including those concerning user content and conduct, and that even if the channel had broken any rules, it could have been informed. Press TV believes it is frequently paying for being the voice of the voiceless, which is what social media and alternative media ought to be.
We thought we were able to break the monopoly on social media. However, in the wake of economic sanctions, we have been slapped with information sanctions too. First, they blocked many accounts belonging to our officials, and recently even ordinary individuals are targeted. When they publish something about a specific subject, their pages are closed. Recently I saw that the chief editor of an economic newspaper had responded to one of Manoto Television's hosts on a specific issue, winning many likes and comments. But several hours later, his page was deleted on Instagram. Is it democracy when someone expresses his political and pro-revolution views in contrast with US propaganda? To see his page get blocked, does it mean anything other than censorship?
Countries such as Iran, which are seriously at the receiving end of US censorship, what can they do to overcome this?
The solution would be to develop independent and national networks individually or jointly. When news and non-news channels opposed to US hegemony, Arabsat, Nilesat, Eutelsat, independent and joint satellites were placed in orbit by allied nations. China has already launched its own independent internet. Russia is following suit. Some European nations are also trying to get rid of US internet.
It would be possible to create new pages and this media war will go on. The new pages will be closed again. We have to remain steadfast because, as I said, since this space is very open and uncontrolled, we can go ahead. Another option would be for us to launch our own data centers. Unfortunately, a wrong imagination spreading among people is that they think national internet would mean disconnection with the global internet. In fact, what we mean is to run our own data centers inside the country. In oil-rich and revolutionary nations with conflict of interests with the US, launching national data centers is a must. For instance, the data center of Iranian Fars news agency was based in Canada, and therefore it was blocked, thereby causing numerous problems for this revolutionary news agency.
Except for 2 or 3 countries that are in full harmony with the US, even the traditional allies of the US, like the European nations of Germany and France, are unhappy with the current state of affairs in Internet. Within the framework of global unity under the aegis of UNESCO, the UN Security Council and similar entities, conditions must be tightened against the US so that it would not be able to impose its own policy on global Internet.
Now, if Soleimani, who helped defeat ISIS or Daesh in Iraq and vast parts of Syria, is the face of violence and the stuff of kids' nightmares, or if press and Hispan TV are mean in displaying the doings of countries such as US or Israel, the same can hardly be said of iFilm. Even iFilm had its pages closed, and its broadcasts are by nature not political, but cultural.
Right now, for instance, I'm working with iFilm website, and there most of our accounts on social media actually are shut down. And the point is that the US is not tolerating any dissident voice. And probably what we can do is trying to come up with some parallel systems through which we can have our own voice rather than we go on some social media platforms like Twitter or Facebook, where the Mughals there are controlling everything.
As for satellite broadcasts, for example, Press TV received fines and restrictions on its activities in London for broadcasting an interview with whom Iran deemed was an infiltrator at the time of the 2009 post-election protests. In February 2013, Press TV was taken off the Galaxy 19 satellite platform that allowed it to broadcast in the United States and Canada. In July 2013, iFilm and other Iranian channels were removed from several European and American satellites, allegedly because of US sanctions. Then in October, the Paris-based Eutelsat cut Iranian state television and radio broadcasts. All this is an indication of who the US would want to get out of the way. Basically, that would be opposing voices, criticizing the US government and Zionist regime, His Majesty and affiliates. That's it for today. Thanks for watching from the whole team. I hope to see you again at the same times next week and each week after. And don't forget to leave your comments and topic requests. Bye for now.